Speaking of gratitude, I am grateful for food. Anybody else in here just like food? Yeah. Our country, I would venture to say our country is a little food obsessed. It's not a criticism, it's just an observation. Let me tell you what I mean. Three of the most popular sitcoms of the last 30 years, now you may not watch a whole lot of TV, maybe you haven't watched a whole lot of programming from the last 30 years or so, but three of the most popular sitcoms of the last 30 years are Friends, Seinfeld, and Big Bang Theory. And now I'm not saying these are three of the most popular sitcoms because I like them. I actually don't even like Seinfeld, to be honest with you. Not my brand of humor. But they are statistically speaking, yeah, I knew that would offend some people in the room, but nobody's walked out yet, so that's good. They are just statistically speaking in terms of ratings and all of that, they're three of the most popular sitcoms of the last 30 years. That's it, right? Each one of those sitcoms features people eating together in nearly every episode. In Seinfeld, they go to a local diner, and then they go to other places and eat food as well. In Friends, they sit at the local coffee shop, like literally almost every single episode times 23 episodes a season times 10 years, right? Like 200 and something times they're sitting in a coffee shop together, drinking coffee and eating muffins or scones or whatever. And then in Big Bang Theory, there's often a conversation about what are we going to order? And it's like, Sheldon was like, it's Thursday. This is what we're going to order because this is what we order on Thursday. And this is the order I get and this is the seat I sit in. And, this is the whole thing. And it's a regularly recurring thing. And I don't think we blink at it. We don't think twice about it because food is just a regular part of our culture. Well, let's get outside of TV. Say you're going on a date. Whether you're in that dating season of your life or you're married and you're just going out with your spouse, what is the most common element anytime you go on a date? It's food, right? Like you may go miniature golfing, you may go to the movies, you may go do a number of things, but food is a common element in dating. Baseball is particularly food-focused. What do you eat when you go to a baseball game? Hot dogs, right? Hot dogs are such a popular baseball food that one of the most popular brands of hot dogs that you buy at the grocery store is called Ballpark, right? And so there's this strong association between hot dogs and baseball. The song Take Me Out to the Ball Game actually says, buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks before we even root for the home team. Like, food is the priority even in that song. It's crazy. First thing we think about when someone suggests going to the movies? Getting some popcorn. Not going on a date, picking up some friends, enjoying the movie. Popcorn is the first thing we think of. Buttery, delicious, 2 million calorie popcorn. We can't even leave normal food alone. We're so food obsessed in our culture that we can't even leave normal food alone. Instead, we have to come up with new concoctions by combining foods that have no business being together. For example, turducken. Do you guys remember that? That was a thing a few years ago, like a turkey and a duck in a a chicken inside a duck inside a turkey? That's, what? Why? Who? Huh? But yeah, it was it was a whole big thing for a whole year or two. Yeah, it was a Madden thing. Okay. So then you've got also, turducken, bacon cupcakes. Now we're putting bacon even in desserts, which I love bacon and I like cupcakes, but no, thank you. Here's a favorite. I just learned about this one recently. Spicy dill pickle flavored goldfish. Goldfish crackers were fine. And dill pickles are all right. And spicy stuff is good. But spicy dill pickle flavored goldfish? No thanks. Danny actually just bought some of those. And she tried them. She says they're pretty good. Yeah. No, thank you. I'll take your word for it. What one thing do Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, Memorial Day, 4th of July, birthdays, open houses, weddings, funerals, baby and bridal showers all have in common? Food. Well, not all of them. Not everything happens at church. Yeah, food is the one thing that all of those things have in common. Our culture might be just a little food obsessed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because eating together is actually one of the best ways to lead people through into Jesus one at a time. We are in the middle, literally, smack dab in the middle, week 3 of 5 of a series called Bless, where we're learning all about practical ways to love your neighbors. Begin with prayer, listen, eat, serve, share your story. Many of us eat at our desks, in our cars, on the go, alone. But eating with people is actually really important, more important than most of us realize. R.I.M. Dunbar is a researcher and professor from Oxford. He did research on the functions of social eating and concluded those who eat socially more often feel happier and are more satisfied with life, are more trusting of others, are more engaged with their local communities, and have more friends that they can depend on for support. Evening meals, so within Dunbar's research, he studied people who eat socially together frequently in the evenings as well. Evening meals result in the respondents to this research feeling closer to those with whom they eat, involve more people. So when you eat together in the evening, it tends to involve more people, more laughter, and more reminiscing. Furthermore, Dunbar's research suggests that the causal direction runs from eating together to bondness rather than the other way around. Put differently, according to this research, it's not that people get closer and then they start eating together regularly. It's that the act of eating together regularly brings people closer together. And Jesus knew that this was true, even without Dunbar's research, right? Because he's God and he knows everything. And so Jesus knew this true, and we see this play out in his earthly ministry. If I ask you to think about the things that Jesus did during his time on earth, chances are your mind would go first to feeding the 5,000. That is one of the things around food that he did, right? Feeding the 5,000, but perhaps teaching, healing, doing miracles, praying, walking on water, dying on the cross, being raised from the dead. These great, big, grand things that Jesus did. And of course, those are the things that our minds naturally go to because they're miraculous, they're supernatural, they're things that only God can do. But it's more frequent, like we talked about with listening last week, it's more frequent that we read about him eating with people. A lot of Jesus' ministry was centered around meals. Like I said, he fed 5,000 people on a hill in the countryside. Shortly after that, he fed an additional 4,000 people, in both cases, plus women and children, and in both cases with lots of leftovers. He performed his first miracle at a wedding feast. The night before his crucifixion, he ate a meal with his closest friends, and not just any meal, but the Passover meal, a strongly established and vitally important part of the Jewish culture and tradition. After his resurrection, he shared breakfast on the beach with his closest disciples, fish for breakfast. That's almost as bad as spicy dill pickled flavored goldfish, whatever it is. That's a mouthful for me. He shared a meal with 2 disciples at the end of the Emmaus Road story as well, right? So they walk along the Emmaus Road, they sit down, they have a meal together, and it was over that meal that they realized it was Jesus that was walking along with them the whole time. As people who scarf down fast food while driving with our knees, all of this eating together might feel like this kind of out-of-place practice for us. But eating together was a big deal in Jesus' culture. It was an indication that you wanted to be associated with the people that you ate with. Going into someone's home and sharing a meal with someone said to anybody who was around and the people there, these are my people. This is who I am associated with. This is who is a part of my social class. And in that day and age, social class was like an honor and shame thing. So like if you were a part of the important elite social class, then you received honor. If you were not, you were shamed. And that's just, it's not even a criticism of the culture. It's just the way it was. So to be associated with people who were seen as being below you was very taboo. And this is why it's so outrageous that Jesus would eat with the kind of people that he would eat with. Respectable rabbis were sought after individuals, and Jesus was a rabbi. And so, what happened with rabbis in the time was they were kind of like the creme de la creme, the elite in Jewish culture. They had memorized every single thing that we have as the Old Testament, and they taught it in a way that got into people and completely changed their lives. And it was kind of like the pinnacle of any kind of job you could have was to be a rabbi. And to follow a rabbi meant 24/7, 365 until you were ready to go and be a rabbi. And so they would only receive the best of the best of the best. And people clamored to be associated with rabbis. It was the highest honor in the culture to be chosen by a rabbi, for a rabbi to say to you, "Follow me." And so rabbis had the privilege of only associating with the best of the best of the best. Yet in Matthew chapter 9, which is our key verse for today, we're going to hang out in Matthew chapter 9, so you can turn your way there while I finish setting this up. Jesus goes to a tax collector's booth, the most despised of sinners in the whole culture, and says to a tax collector, this person who made his money by ripping off his own people, working for the oppressive Roman government, and he said, "Follow me." This highly respected position of rabbi said to the lowest and least respected of all people, "I want to be associated with you." And more so, he did that by eating with Matthew. So Matthew chapter 9, starting in verse 9, says this: "As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax office. And he said to him, 'Follow me.' And Matthew got up and followed Jesus." In Jesus' day, tax collectors were considered the scum of the earth, local lackeys for the Roman Empire. Most Jewish people considered them traitors because they made their money by overcharging their own people. We read last week, Zacchaeus, the tax collector, he committed to anybody that I have ripped off, anybody that I have extorted, I will pay back 4 times as much. Zacchaeus gives us an account of tax collectors ripped off their own people. Like I said, conversely, rabbis were highly respected and sought after leaders. So when he said, "Follow me," it was highly, highly controversial. Then he goes, we don't get this, Matthew doesn't say, and so Jesus went to his house and had a meal. The next thing we know, Jesus is eating at Matthew's place. So we keep reading in verse 10 and 11. "While he was reclining at the table in the house," reclining at the table is what you did after you got done eating. So at this point, he's gone to Matthew's house, he sat down, he's eaten, he's leaning back at the table now. "While he's reclining at the table in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?'" Because again, he shouldn't be associating with them. Now, it's worth noting that the term sinner in Jesus' day was a catch-all derogatory term for anyone who wasn't religious or who was involved in any kind of illicit lifestyle. So, for example, a common illicit lifestyle in that time may have been, or a more common may have been, prostitution. So, tax collectors, prostitutes, other sinners. So here's Jesus, the esteemed rabbi, eating with the most despised and looked down on people of the day, a veritable who's who of the socially unacceptable. To the leaders of the religious establishment, the people who were focused on regulations and rule-following religion, the Pharisees, this was just absolutely shameful. And they're so offended by Jesus gathering with sinners and tax collectors that they tried to undermine him behind his back, but then this happens. Verse 12 and 13. "Now when he heard this, the Pharisees asking Jesus' disciples, why is your teacher eating with these people? When he heard this, Jesus said, it is not those who are well who need a doctor, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. He's saying to the religious leaders and teachers of the law, go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. See, the Pharisees were these all-stars at performing religious rituals, but they were so busy keeping all the rules that they were ignoring the poor and the vulnerable and the marginalized. So Jesus is saying, you know God says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, but you don't really know what that means. Or if you do know what that means, you're certainly not acting like it. For the Pharisees, the first priority is obedience to the rules. But for Jesus, the first priority is his mission to the people. Jesus knows that seeking and saving the lost means finding them where they are. Like you can't seek and save the lost unless you go to where the lost are. And because eating is an important part of the culture, that seeking and saving the lost often happens over a meal. In short, Jesus is a missional eater. Let me say that again. Jesus is a missional eater. He blesses people by sharing meals with them in the places God shows him. We said in week 1, we looked at the story of Abraham when God said, go to the land I will show you. And we talked about how we are blessed to be a blessing in the places that God will show us, to the people that we encounter along the way. And once we get there, this is Jesus living that out. Author Henry Nouwen writes, when we invite friends for a meal, we do much more than offer them food for their bodies. We offer friendship, fellowship, good conversation, intimacy, and closeness. When we say, help yourself, take some more, don't be shy, have some more food, we offer our guests not only our food and drink, but also ourselves. A spiritual bond grows, and we become food and drink for one another. In other words, we become nourishment for one another. When we eat together, we're doing way more than simply sharing a meal. When we eat together, we are living on mission. And yet, something that sounds so simple is often so difficult to execute. Each week in this series, I'm reminding you of this Blessed Journal. If you haven't picked one up yet, I would love for you to grab one on your way out today. My simple challenge to you in week 1 was fill one side of each page each day with prayers of, God, who are you sending me to and where are you sending me? How do you want me to be a blessing? And each week as we pray, each day as you pray through this, ask God to just show you today. Open my eyes. Where am I going over the next 24 hours? Who might I encounter? Who might I see? What opportunities might you have for me to be a blessing? Whether it's with someone I've never seen before and may never see again, or someone I have a relationship with. God, open my eyes and my ears and my heart, my hands and my feet, so that I may go and bless other people in your name, so that I may be a vessel for you to bless other people. So if you haven't grabbed one of these, grab one on the way out. Incidentally, I ordered a ton of these just because that's how they came, right? So we have extras. If you filled this thing up and you want another one, we have plenty. So keep writing in it. Keep us posted if you want any more. It could be, as you write out your prayers in your blessed prayer journal, as you seek the Lord and just have a conversation with him on a regular basis, it could be that God wants you to bless a neighbor, like a literal neighbor, somebody who lives close to you. Could be a family member, could be a coworker or friend. Maybe God is inviting you to bless a specific place, like a nursing home or an apartment complex or a coffee shop or one of the schools in the community. An organization that focuses on feeding the hungry or clothing people who have clothing insecurity or marginalized or hurting people of some social group or area. The opportunities are like wide open. Just talk to the Lord and listen to what he says. I love that old saying, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth that we may listen twice as much as we speak. That's what prayer is like. Prayer should involve a ton of sitting and listening and not just us doing all the talking. When we start thinking about the people and places that God is inviting us to bless, it's easy to come up with excuses, especially when it comes to eating with people. So just three, I'm going to kind of wrap this up. This is a long ending, but we're going to kind of wrap this up with there's three excuses that I think people often give for not engaging in this missional practice of blessing our neighbors. Number one, I don't like having people in my home. Or maybe I don't have very much room in my house to entertain. I get that. We were in a small group for 11 years, and we hosted 2 events because we had a dozen adults in our small group, and then we had kids, and we did not have a lot of room in our house. And so we didn't host the small group a lot. We didn't have people over to our house a ton. So I understand. When it comes to eating, if you don't like having people in your home or you feel like you don't have space in your home, eat out. It's a simple solution to that problem. If I don't like having people in my home is really a mask, it's like an excuse within an excuse for, I'm not a very good cook, but I don't really want to admit that I'm a very good cook, or I'm super self-conscious about my cooking, and I don't know if I really want to open myself up to, because it's kind of vulnerable, you make something for someone, and if they don't like it, well, that's okay. Order in. You don't have to make the food. But if you do, you could eat peanut butter and jelly and Doritos. It's not what you eat that matters. It's who you're sharing the meal with. So don't let, I'm not a great cook, or I don't like people having to my house, don't let that become an excuse that keeps you from participating in missional eating like Jesus did. We've been eating with friends of ours, the Watts, our friends Jonathan and Crystal. They have 2 boys. We've been eating regularly or fairly regularly with them since Mackenzie was little bitty. I asked Mackenzie the other day, I was how old was Mackenzie? When we took our first meal over to the Watts, it's when their younger son was born. So it's been about 14 years or so. So Mackenzie was 2 when we first went over there. I cannot count the number of times we've shared a meal with our friends Jonathan and Crystal. Dozens and dozens of times, somewhere between 50 and 100 times probably we've eaten together. And I can count on one hand, without exaggeration, the number of times the meal we ate was not Mexican food or pizza. Every single time, with very little exception, it's Mexican food or pizza and brownies and ice cream. Every single time, brownies and ice cream. And you would think after 75-ish times, we'd be let's not do Mexican or pizza. But nope, every single time we're Mexican or pizza. Let's do this, every single time. And it's fine. It's totally fine because it's not the food that we eat. It's who we're eating the food with that matters the most. Okay, excuse number 2, I wouldn't know what to say. I'm not much for conversation. I don't know how to start conversations with people. I understand that. A lot of us are not used to entertaining guests. We're not sure what we would talk about or how the evening would go, but let me encourage you with this. Eating together provides a great context for us to practice the blessing practice that we talked about last week, and that's listen. Invite people over and genuinely be curious about their lives. Ask them simple get-to-know-you kinds of questions like, where did they grow up? What was their family like? What kind of jobs have they had? What do they do for fun? What are their dreams for the future? Just open-ended, let me warn you against, don't ask yes or no questions. So do you like football? No. That's a really good way to kill a conversation before it even starts, right? Do you like basketball? Yeah. Don't ask yes or no questions. Ask open-ended questions that invite a conversation, and then just talk about these things. And just be curious enough about their lives that you genuinely want to know more about them, and then the conversations will kind of take care of themselves. Third excuse, maybe the most popular one, I just don't have the time. Well, let me remind you of what I said previously. The things that are most important to us find their ways to our calendars. But if that's not enough, let me give you some numbers. You're already eating. Everybody eats. And I'm venturing to guess that everybody in here and watching online eats every day or really close to it. Typically, we say people eat 3 meals a day, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now, I know that's not always true, and what counts as a meal, like this bar that I can fit in my pocket and unwrap and eat as I continue working, that's not really a meal, but whatever. Let's just say, for the sake of math, 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 21 opportunities in a week to invite someone to join you into a rhythm that already exists in your life. 21 opportunities for you to eat missionally. 21 opportunities without adding a single thing to your calendar to just be a little more intentional to say, join me for one of these 21 meals. So that all of those things that Dunbar found in his research, like purely selfish motives, your life is better when you break bread with people. That's it. Your life is better when you eat with other people on a regular basis. But this isn't about selfish motives. This is about blessing your neighbors. Their lives will be better if you break bread with them on a regular basis. So 1 time a week, 1 out of 21 opportunities, that is 5% of the time. 5% of the time. So little bit of context, right? If you are in Major League Baseball, this would be a batting average of 50. 50. Even I know enough about baseball to know that 50 is way down here. If you've got a 230 or a 250, you're doing well in the major leagues. I'm talking about 50. That is a low bar. Let's go to basketball. Shaquille O'Neal has the 5th worst free throw average in the NBA across all of professional basketball history. He is the 5th worst player. His average is 52%. So I'm talking about a 10th of the success rate of Shaq at the free throw line. I'm talking about a 5th of a professional level batting average. I'm talking the bar is way, way down here. But last week I mentioned 1% of churches in the United States say that they are properly equipping their people to go and tell other people about Jesus. We have an evangelism crisis in the country right now. So if you seize 1 out of 21 opportunities, you're like a pro. I'd be like a professional baseball player at a 5% batting average. It'd be like a professional basketball player at a 5% free throw average. The bar to be a pro at this is pretty low. And I say all that to say it's accessible to everybody here. Now, there are introverts among us. And believe it or not, I'm actually more introverted. I'm great on a stage when I'm 15 feet away from everybody. But when I go home and I'm okay, so open up my home 1 meal a week to have somebody come over for dinner. That's when the introvert in me comes screaming to the foreground. So for all of my fellow introverts in the room, I hear you. I see you. So let me give you an easier on-ramp. Because I need an easier on-ramp. 2 times a month. What every other week-ish instead of once a week. That is taking advantage of 2 out of every 84 opportunities. 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. 2.5%. So all of those stats I just shared at 5%, cut it in half. 2.5% of the time. That's even easier. Maybe every other week instead of every week is an easier place to start instead of trying to jump in with every week. Because after all, these excuses that people give, those are real. We feel those. The tension in that is real. But what about once a month? 1 out of 84 opportunities to invite someone to join something that is already a regular rhythm in your life. It's a little more than 1% of the time. A little more than 1% of the meals that you eat in any given month, and just inviting someone to join you for that. Let me make it even a little bit easier for you. It doesn't have to be a whole meal. It could be coffee or ice cream or something that you can meet quickly and you can finish quickly and you can escape easily if you make it weird, right? You're not going to make it weird because I already told you how to have conversations, and so you don't have to worry about that. We already tackled that. But just in case you're worried about making it weird, like it's easy to pick up your cup of coffee and leave if you make it weird, or if you have a heart, like maybe you sit with somebody who's not particularly loquacious and like you just can't get the conversation going. Okay, great. Grab the rest of your coffee and thank them for their time and head on your way. But there are lots of opportunities in your home, at a restaurant, at a coffee shop, at an ice cream place, lots of opportunities. If you start with one time a month, it's, like I said, a little more than 1% of the time. So here's my invitation for us. I guess it's a little more than an invitation. It's a challenge. We need to be curious enough about other people that we want to get to know them, that we want to hear what is going on in their lives. We need to be courageous enough that we're willing to sit down with them and listen to what's going on in their lives, and consistent enough that it is a blessing to them. Because you could do it once, and wow, that was really nice. We should do this again. And then it never happens again. That happens more often than not. I'm guilty of that myself. So to be curious, courageous, and consistent, our values, like I know I keep hammering on these, but like it's as simple as these three things with a little bit of direction and a little bit of encouragement about how to make it happen. People can be blessed by God through you. Just give them 1% of your meals a month. So let's make an effort, not an excuse. Let's choose to be curious, courageous, and consistent. Imagine with me, just imagine with me. If Robin's Nest, T&D, Las Flores, Mark's Place, Mr. M's, The Craft Co., Abe's, Darb's, Mouville, Foster's, because Black Dog is closed now. I don't know if you knew this. It closed like on Wednesday this week. And Foster Coffee is coming in. Incidentally, if you like Black Dog, Foster Coffee was their supplier, so the coffee's not going to taste all that different. So new coffee shop coming into town soon. Burger King, McDonald's. Pick a place with a table. We have lots of choices in the community. Your own living room, dining room, kitchen. What if any or all of these places became places for missional eating, for connecting, for caring, for listening, for blessing Eaton Rapids? Imagine the people who gather in this space every Sunday morning, spreading out across Eaton Rapids or whatever community you live in, because I know we're spread out across a few different communities. And they were places of missional eating, where the love and hope of Jesus Christ is being shared over a table with someone. Imagine how beautiful that could be. This is a part of what it looks like when Jesus says, as you go, be making disciples. And it's as simple as inviting someone in 1% of the time to a rhythm that already exists in your life. Would you stand? And send you out with a blessing. Add to your journal this week. The places God will bless through you may include coffee shops, restaurants, ice cream shops, your own home. Begin with prayer, listen to the Lord, and be like Jesus. Be a missional eater. My challenge for you this week is a little bit different of a benediction as opposed to a prayer. It is a challenge. Put a meal on your calendar this week. I don't necessarily mean schedule it for this week. I mean this week, put a meal on your calendar for some time in the next month where you're going to sit down with someone over food at your house, at a restaurant, a coffee shop, whatever it is. But commit to following through and go eat missionally. I love you guys. We'll see you next week.